Why hello there, and welcome to Some Weirdo on the Internet Explains the System They Use to Rate Tabletop Role-Playing Games. So I've been reviewing games here on the YouTube for almost 2 years now, and I figured I might as well explain the system that I use for rating aforementioned games, for those who happen to want that additional information. Games are rated on 3 base categories: character creation, mechanics, and presentation, each of which are rated out of 6, with 1 to 2 being below average, 3 to 4 being average, and 5 to 6 being above average, for a total score out of 18 points. There are also 3 adjustment categories: setting, content, and writing, each of which are rated out of 3, which corresponds to a -1, no adjustment, or +1 to the overall score, which gives an overall rating of 0% for 1 in every category to 117% for all perfect scores, which is incredibly unlikely. Also, because scores can actually be 0, it is possible to drop into negative scores, but that's even less likely because I just probably wouldn't bother reviewing anything that bad. I do things this way because setting and content are often not applicable, and this way not giving a rating in those areas has the same effect on overall score as just being rated average. Whereas writing, on the other hand, just doesn't really affect the quality of the game that much, just makes it easier or harder to learn and use the rules. And that is the short version. I will now delve into each category and what various ratings in those categories generally mean, so if you want that extra information, here it is. Character creation is primarily rated based on difficulty and options, so basically how easy is it to make whatever character you want to play. A score of 5 or 6 means character creation has lots of depth and options, while still being fairly easy to understand and use. 3 or 4, character creation with a fair amount of options, while still being fairly easy, a lot of depth and options while being somewhat complicated, or incredibly easy but also simplistic. 1 or 2, character creation that is overly complicated relative to its overall depth, is incomplete or otherwise significantly lacking in some way. A score of 0 means character creation rules are absent despite being required for normal play, or are so poorly done that they are effectively absent. And character creation is not applicable when a game does not use statistically defined characters, all characters have identical statistics, or exclusively uses pre-generated characters which are provided, in which case the total score is calculated out of 12. Mechanics similarly are rated based primarily on depth and ease of use. 5 or 6 means that mechanics provide a good amount of depth and nuance and cover all situations that may reasonably come up, but are still fairly easy to learn and use, or are otherwise interesting or noteworthy in some way. 3 or 4, ease of use of mechanics reflects complexity and applicable situations. Basically, the less well-defined the mechanics are, the simpler they should be. 1 or 2, mechanics are overly complicated, partially broken or incomplete, and or do not cover situations that are likely to occur in-game. 0 means core mechanics are broken to the point of being completely unplayable, are absent without any indication of how conflicts are to be resolved, or are just incomprehensible. And a mechanics score is not applicable when something uses mechanics from another specified system without presenting itself as a complete game, or is intended to be played without a rules-based conflict resolution system. Presentation is rated on the look of the game, basically the quality of the overall product rather than the abstract contents. Primarily this means text formatting, page layout, very much including section, column, and page breaks, and art, but generally more the way it is used than its quality. 5 or 6 means layout is stylish and visually interesting, all sections are clearly labeled and easy to identify, art, if present, is stylistically consistent and well used. 3 or 4, a more or less professional level of design, even if not particularly interesting. Text formatting and breaks are for the most part intentional, with little to no errors. Art, if present, adheres to a general stylistic consistency and is mostly used effectively. 1 or 2, layout is below a professional level, little to no attention has been given to typography, page and column breaks, typeface choices, etc., contains a large number of errors or multiple serious ones. Art, if present, is stylistically inconsistent and or poorly used. 0 means no intentional layout or formatting is present beyond basic section headings and lists, or is just text dumped into a template. And presentation cannot be not applicable, because if there was no presentation, I would be unable to perceive and therefore review the thing. And now on to the adjustment scores, which as previously stated are rated out of 3 and only adjust the base score. And first is setting, basically how interesting is the game's setting and how well are relevant aspects of it described. For example, Vampire the Masquerade doesn't need to detail its real-world setting because we all know what that is, only how vampires fit into it. That is the relevant aspect of the setting. 3 would be a setting that is very interesting and or goes far beyond the minimum required to effectively interact with the world. 2, a setting that is okay but not really all that noteworthy and provides enough information on the setting to effectively interact with it. 1, a setting that does not provide necessary information relevant to gameplay. 0, a setting that is hypothetically required to effectively play the game, but is not provided in any meaningful way. And setting is not applicable when a game's setting would be known or knowable to players, like the modern or historical real world or an existing fictional universe, has no relevant impact on the game, or the game is intended to be played in any setting. Content is rated on how much stuff there is beyond the core rules. 3 is a large amount of content beyond the core rules, most if not all of which is relevant. 2, all content that could be reasonably expected is provided. Things such as equipment, spells, and monsters, if applicable, are provided in sufficient variety relative to the overall game complexity, or sufficient rules are provided for creating your own. 1, content is a bare minimum, options are extremely limited, some required content may be absent without any guidelines on how to make it yourself. 0, large amounts of necessary content are absent, with no indication on how to make any of it yourself. And content is not applicable if standard gameplay requires no additional content beyond the core rules, or sufficient easily usable guidelines are provided for generating all necessary content yourself. And finally, writing. Basically is the information written and presented in a clear and coherent manner, and easy to find things when you need them. There is also a general order that I do like to see, but is by no means a requirement. A score of 3 is all content well written, clear, interesting to read, and laid out in a way that makes finding all information easy. 2, most content is well written with only a few minor errors, all rules are clearly understandable, and most content is laid out where it can be easily found. 1, content is poorly written, contains multiple errors, is difficult to understand, and or is laid out in a counterintuitive manner. 0, writing is so poor as to be incomprehensible. And like presentation, writing cannot be not applicable, as without writing there literally wouldn't be a thing to review. And of course, these are just my general guidelines. Tabletop RPGs are a thing with such variety that something can be so good, so bad, or just so different that I could not possibly account for it beforehand. But that is basically how I go about trying to maintain a little bit of objectivity amidst my general sassy ramblings that resemble reviews. So now you know if you wanted to know, and if you didn't want to know, you probably should have stopped watching the video a while ago, but either way, thank you for watching, and as long as you're here, why not hit all of the lovely buttons, like, subscribe, check out the other videos, all of that stuff, and I will see you next time.